Welcome to another episode of With Love Mama, the podcast. And today we're joined by Aimee sharing her birth story. So she shares about how her first birth was a failed induction and her second was a planned successful VBAC. This is a super empowering story to listen to if you are a mama wanting to go ahead with VBAC, but you're looking for positive stories. And as usual, don't forget to share this episode with one of your friends who might be looking for a story to listen to just like this one. And if you're not already following the podcast, please make sure to go over and click the subscribe button. This helps the podcast to grow and it allows me to know that you're actually enjoying the content that we're putting out. Okay, let's get into Aimee's birth stories. Welcome back to another episode of With Love Mama, and this is our second birth story guest, Aimee. I'm so excited for this episode because not only does Aimee have two births to share, but she has one that didn't quite go to plan and that one that went really, really well. And I'm just so excited for you to share like your wisdom from both of your births. But welcome, Aimee. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Really good. I'm so excited. I think like VBAC is a really big thing that a lot of women fear actually doing because it takes quite a lot of self-trust to go from one type of birth and then try out another when you know, although the other one wasn't quite the way you wanted it to be, you knew it worked.
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into your first birth. So, what made it feel traumatic for you?
I think the not knowing, like there was a lot I didn't know at the time. I was 19 and I just thought, it was just gonna happen and the babies just come out and that's it. There was nothing bad around it. I hadn't really been informed much.
Mm.
Um, so I guess, it ending in a cesarean section was just like what just happened. I was just so uneducated.
Yeah. So you run us through your actual like first birth, like what actually happened. I know you mentioned you were induced. Like, let's go from the start of that. Like, were you told that you were needed to be induced?
Yeah, so I think I was 39 weeks and 6 days when I was induced. The reason for induction was because I presented to their like clinic, their like PAC clinic, for decreased fetal movements. But I think those like presentations were more so anxiety,
Mm.
like or just not knowing, first time mum, not knowing whether it was normal that they had like sleep wake times. So it was more just like first time anxious rather than decreased fetal movement because every time we'd kind of go in, he was fine.
Mhm.
um, and then, so yeah, they recommended the induction, and that was with the Foley, like a Foley balloon induction.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that all happened quite quickly itself. The whole the balloon falling out. I think they're supposed to be in for about 12 hours,
Mhm.
and I think mine fell out after about 6. And then it was straight down to birth suite. And I think around that time I was 3 or 4 centimeters,
Mhm.
and I pretty much got the epidural quite quickly.
Mhm.
I think like I was very much so set on I don't want any pain relief, and I hadn't practiced at all what I was going to do. It was just, oh, I'm not going to have pain relief. I'm going to be so fine. And I was not fine.
And
Yeah.
the
So,
contractions from a induction are completely different to
yeah,
um, going into labor. Oh my gosh, I can't think of the word.
naturally,
When your body just goes into labor.
spontaneously.
Spontaneous, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a
Yeah.
very different experience. And if you didn't have you weren't properly informed, that's also that
Mm.
misalignment with your body because you're probably thinking, whoa, this is so much more intense than I can actually handle because it kind of can be if you don't understand that side of it.
Yeah. Well, I think I literally had no idea what Syntocin does or
Mhm.
what it was going to do or how hard that was going to be. I was just like, oh yeah, it'll just kind of start and go into it. But when I got down there and they put it up, it just hit me hard and fast.
Yeah.
Like I remember getting into the shower and that was really good relief for me. And I remember I think I wanted a water birth. So I got into the bath, and as soon as I got into the bath, my contractions were not even 30 seconds apart and they were strong.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from there, you also mentioned to me your labor ended up going for 24 hours.
Yes, I did some
Mhm.
calculations the other day and it was 23 hours
Yeah.
exactly. So
So is that
yeah,
with
it was.
those back-to-back contractions that whole time, or did you have the waves? How?
I feel like it kind of started a little bit like, you'd have a bit of a wave, but then it was almost as if I got into the bath and that's where things picked up. I don't know if my body just didn't like the bath or whether the Cinto had been upped at that point. I'm not sure. But that's when it really started getting hard and fast. And I was like, just done. I was done. I was like, I need an epi. That's it.
Hmm. And was
Yeah.
there like a moment? I know you said you like went into it with not really any plan and not being
Mm.
quite well informed. Was there a moment where things did, when they took that turn and you were taken in for the emergency Caesar, where you realized your birth wasn't quite going the way you envisioned it could have? Like you
Mm.
said, you thought you just kind of had contractions and had a baby.
Yeah. I didn't honestly really think about it for quite a long time.
Hmm.
Probably until I was pregnant with my second. That's when I was like, oh, that really didn't go to plan. Something definitely went wrong there. And I think from myself and experience, I was just kind of like, this is because I probably didn't read into it or wasn't educated enough. And I was just like, the thought of a birth plan, I was like, oh, I'm just going to write on a piece of paper what I want and what I don't want, rather than actually looking into those things and diving deeper into how I could make that happen.
Mm. So it took until your second pregnancy to like
Mhm.
decide that you didn't want it to go the same way as your first birth. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I felt like I'd almost missed out on
Mm.
being able to have a baby naturally, and like that bond that everyone talks about straight after birth and the achievement you feel. And I was just like, wow, I really did miss that. Like C-sections can still be absolutely beautiful. Even emergency ones can be, especially if you have the right team. But just for me, it was such a rush, and of also not knowing. I didn't really know what was going to happen.
Mm. And that's really scary as a young first time mum to
Mm,
also be rushed into an emergency surgery. And that whole
mm,
transition in itself, the first time, it's a massive life change, but then also trying to emotionally process what just happened. And like you said, your bond was a little bit different to what you knew you could have potentially
mm,
experienced, which, like you said, doesn't mean that like everyone's experience is like that, but that's just how it was feeling for you.
yeah.
How was early postpartum for you after that?
It was a lot. I felt like in the hospital everything was pretty good. Like my son, he was a good sleeper. He seemed to be feeding well, but the minute we got home, everything was just crazy. Like he wasn't sleeping well. He stopped feeding well, and I almost felt lost at what to do and like who to reach out to for help.
Mm.
Um, so I guess those first sort of 6 weeks were like surviving, literally.
Yeah, the first few months in motherhood is already can be quite a lot, but then you were
Yeah,
also recovering from a major surgery.
yeah.
Mm.
Yes, that was a big deal. Like just even obviously partners where I birthed couldn't stay overnight. So learning how to grab my baby out of a cot beside me when I could barely move myself was just that was a big shock to my system.
Of course. And
Mm.
even that postpartum experience compared to your second postpartum, what were the differences
Mhm.
there?
Well, with my second postpartum, I was also single and doing it on my own. And honestly, it was a million times better. I just feel like the healing from a VBAC was just so much nicer. I felt like I was able to get up and walk around and grab the baby if I needed. And I just felt more educated, not only from myself, but I guess with my age a little bit more too. I was starting to look into things and understand more, especially from already having a child,
Mm.
and working off those experiences and how they didn't work.
Yeah. So let's talk through your VBAC birth experience because you said that it was really positive for you, and I would just love to hear all about it.
I think I was 38 and 6 with that pregnancy. And I remember just doing like lots of walking with my mum. We would go out like every day and we'd just do walking in the park and, pushing the pram with the first. And I remember that afternoon sort of feeling a few little niggles here and there, and ended up going home and thinking things might have been starting, but was kind of a bit in denial. And then things really did start picking up into the night. And I called my midwife, and she said that sounded like that I was in like those early stages of labor. That would have been about 8 o'clock at night. And at that time, I let my child's father know that things were going on and that he needed to sort of make his way over to me. And by the time he got there, I was definitely going through it, but I was still like managing at home, having a shower. I was washing my hair, blow drying my hair, getting ready for hospital. And then at that point, yes, it was, I think I didn't get to the point of straightening my hair, but I was doing those things, keeping busy at home, which really, really helped. And then I got my mum to come over and she took us into the hospital. Yep. And by the time I got there at that point, things were just through the roof, ridiculous. My baby was posterior, so I had all that back-to-back pain. Got into like their pregnancy assessment center and I was 4 centimeters. So I was just super proud of myself for getting to that point. And then went over to birth suite. And I think with his pregnancy, I was very much so like, I want to see if I can do it unmedicated as well. But by the time I got into birth suite, I was just like, nope, epidural. I'm very happy at where I got to considering the first.
The first, did you got to 4 centimeters from the induction, and then you did this all on your own while getting your hair blow dried in the mirror at home.
Yeah. Yes. It was so lovely. And I just feel like having those goals set for myself at home really helped me. Like I know 4 centimeters isn't huge, but also your cervix doesn't just dilate. It has to like fully thin out. And that's probably your hardest part. Like the dilation after that sort of just happens. But I definitely felt really proud that I had gotten to that point. So I was like, yep, I deserve this epi. I'm just going to relax and enjoy that second labor. So then I got my epidural, and I think my labor with him might have only been about 16 hours. So still long, but definitely nowhere near 23 hours. And then it came time to pushing, and he wasn't quite coming past my sort of pelvis. And then there was the query of the shoulder dystocia. I did end up having interventions there. So I had a vacuum delivery with an episiotomy. I don't think I was too educated on that either. I knew what they were, but at that point, I think at the end they mentioned taking me for a Caesar. And I remember just saying like, no, this is not what I want. But then I also started getting a little bit scared, and I was like, okay, just like take me. But they were willing to try some interventions first. And I'm so glad that they did, because although, some of those interventions might be a bit traumatic for some people, just being able to achieve my VBAC was like, it healed a lot of things for me.
That's a really beautiful point that you make. I think a lot of mums, their first experience can be traumatic, or even if it's they're a first time mum, and you hear all of these terrible stories about interventions, and you have just highlighted how sometimes they are actually can make your experience so positive when used in the correct way. You still got you desired a VBAC, and that was what you got.
Yeah. And it was definitely like, at that point, I was just kind of, I guess I was in a little bit of shock, like everything had just gone on. My son actually came out, he wasn't crying, so he went over to the table and they were doing a few checks on him, but they kept like, the team in the room was very reassuring and kept saying, he was fine and he just needed a little bit of help, but he was all good. And he came to me within sort of 15, 20 minutes. And to be honest, it was all worth it. I didn't have to have another C-section. So those interventions I was okay with.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's so nice hearing that you actually feel so good about that because like I also
Mm.
said, people can have there's a lot of stories around it and sometimes interventions are used in an unnecessary way, but it empowered
Yeah.
you and your birth, and I think that's such a beautiful
Yeah.
piece. Were there any like did you have fears going into your VBAC?
Um, I think my only fear would have just been that I had to go for another C-section
Mm,
because especially after you do have two C-sections, your chances of a VBAC kind of, go goodbye.
mm.
So I was really set on the fact that I was going to have a VBAC, and that was it. Like I didn't really think anything else around that. I was just like, that's it. I'm set in my way. That's going to happen.
Yeah. And you, I know just from like socials and everything, you're on your conception journey now to try for number
Mhm.
3. And do you think you're going to go down the VBAC route again?
100%.
Yeah. And
Yes.
now that you're
100%.
also a student midwife and you would have so much more information just at the top of your mind, what do you think going into your next birth? Is there anything that you would do differently throughout your pregnancy or you would want to look differently in your labor now that you definitely are going in informed?
Yeah, well, I think both of my pregnancies went quite well. There's nothing I would really change there, but definitely my laboring, I would change to staying at home as long as I possibly could by setting goals for myself. So, like setting a goal to watch Love Actually and
Mhm.
sticking to sitting in front of the TV for that amount of time. And if things aren't sort of going too well, then set myself a goal to jump into the shower for 20 minutes, set a timer, stay in there for the 20 minutes, even if it's getting a bit much. But like just those goals to keep me at home as long as possible. Because I feel like as soon as you do go into hospital, your risk of intervention definitely goes up
Yeah.
being in that sort of medical environment. And that's fine. And sometimes, it's definitely needed. But I feel like if the possibility of me being able to do it at home as long as possible, that's what I want to go for. And then with my labor, I don't know if I really have any sort of plans as such. I think I would just really like to use the shower a lot more.
Mm,
With
yeah.
my first, I got into the shower and it was amazing. And I can't remember why I got pulled out of the shower. And I remember thinking at the time, that was amazing. Why did you get me out of there? It was working.
The water is like such a relief. I had a home birth, like I chose to have a home birth,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I either went from the toilet, which they call the dilation station, to
Yeah.
the
Oh, I
shower.
love that. Yeah. Definitely,
And
that will be in my next birth plan, the dilation station, because it
yeah.
has worked wonders for everyone that I've been following through their pregnancies.
Yes, definitely. Well, it completely just helps the pelvic floor to just completely release and like relax. And I love that you would love to stay in your own environment because, I mean, there is a lot of research around like being in your safe environment where it's very predictable and you know all the things and you're super comfortable. It helps with the progression. So, yeah, that's a nice little goal that you have.
I feel like there is so much fear around birth that like we don't talk about what's normal enough. Like we were made to do this, and yeah, I know that there can be things that happen in people's labor and birth that don't exactly go the normal way and do need that intervention. But like in those early stages of labor, our body's doing everything it needs to do, and being in your own environment is just helps it so much, like to relax and get everything going naturally.
Yeah, definitely. For women listening who might feel really scared after having maybe their first experience was similar to you, it was quite traumatic and it just didn't go quite to plan or the way that they desired, what would you want her to know?
Do your research and
Mhm.
educate yourself. Like that's my biggest thing because I feel like even if you wanted a VBAC post a cesarean, like if you don't look into it and then you go into hospital and maybe something's happening and they just say, oh well, we're going to take you for a C-section. There may be a way around that, and not always, like it's not always a bad thing to do your own research and look into things because it's always up to you at the end of the day what you do.
Mm.
And I think with VBACs too, a lot of in the medical industry, it is safer to deliver your baby via C-section from having a previous C-section. So medically, of course, that's what most people are going to recommend. So I think just trusting yourself and yeah, doing your own research is really important.
Yeah, I love that. Going in informed, trusting in yourself,
Yeah.
and like changing that relationship that you have with birth by informing yourself. I love
Yeah,
that so
definitely.
much. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I feel like that was so nice to hear
Mm.
a positive VBAC experience. And I really loved the piece around how you still had intervention, but you knew that it was right for you and you feel really good in that.
Yeah.
Because, like I did say, some women feel so scared of these different interventions, but they can actually lead to such a beautiful experience. So, you brought so much like wisdom to this podcast. Thank you so much.
Yay, of course. Thank you.
If you loved this episode, don't forget to rate the show, subscribe to the podcast, and share this episode with a friend who might need to hear it. It supports our community to grow to reach more mums who might need to hear stories just like this one. If you would love to come on and share your birth story or come on as a guest sharing a story with your postpartum experience, motherhood, whatever that might be that you know could be super empowering for other mums to listen to, please go to the link below in the show notes and you can apply to come on to the show. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back in your ears next week.